Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
Okay, so my whole family was supposed to fly to New Zealand this summer because it was the last holiday before my oldest leaves for college. It was a 7 days vacation plan, and when my parents in law found out about it, they asked if they could also come. At first, I was against the idea of bringing them alone, as the whole thing is going to be very taxing, and I have already booked everything in advance for the four of us, me, my husband, and our two kids. Adding mom and dad so late into the plan would be problematic, and if there's anything I hate, it's being unprepared. I overthink everything and prepare for the wildest of outcomes for every occasion. Dealing with sudden changes and unorganized messes leaves me anxious and hyperactive. But my husband assured me time and again that it shouldn't be a problem and he's personally going to take care of everything. He said if we are unable to add them at any point of our schedule, he's going to make sure they have something to do and it shouldn't be chaotic as parents aren't kids who need supervision even if it's a foreign country. With his reassurance, I agreed with him. My husband told me that he'll need my help with booking our flights because I was the one who booked our seats before, and if it's possible, he wanted me to see if we can all catch a plane together instead of booking them on a different flight. So I checked the seat availability, and thankfully, I was able to get them booked in the same flight. Once done, I told my mother in law all the details over call and sent a text to my father in law just so they can take a look in case they mix up the dates or timings. I even asked them to call me to ask any questions they might have. We were supposed to leave last week, and the day before our flight, I called mom and dad separately to remind them to pack and be ready. Then the next day, my husband called them to make sure they were on time and wouldn't be late. Father in law told us that they were all packed and ready and have even booked a cab in advance, so we should stop worrying. I finally took a deep breath and we left for the airport. We reached there and arranged all our luggage for a security check. We were waiting for our parents, but when we called them again, they didn't pick up. An hour before our flight, I asked my husband to deposit the luggage at the gate and we should go through security and wait inside for mom and dad. Meanwhile, I kept calling father in law and finally he picked up and told me that he's going to be late. I asked him how it happened as the last time we checked they were all ready to go and he said he thought he had enough time to swing by one of his friends' houses. So he went over and got slightly held back. I didn't even have to ask him to know what was so important that he went over when he was scheduled to catch a flight. I just asked him if he could make it on time to catch the flight, and unfortunately, he said he couldn't. I was furious and panicked at the same time. We had been planning this for a long while, and this was an important trip because my oldest wouldn't really get to go out with us for the next few years. So I told father in law that if he's going to be late, he should wait at the airport and book the next flight to New Zealand. Or he could catch a connecting flight if a direct one isn't available. But he said that we shouldn't leave without them and we should all reschedule. Even hearing those words come out of his mouth was so ridiculous that I was left speechless. Never mind the money that'd be a waste if we rescheduled all our flights. It was his fault that we were in this mess. So he should be the one to compromise. So I told him so and asked him to figure something out because no way am I staying or allowing anyone else to stay here just so we can all travel together. Then I hung up and told my husband about the call. He agreed with me and called mother in law to tell her about us leaving and that she should get father in law to rearrange the flights. We were waiting for another 15 or so minutes when suddenly airport security came over and asked me to go with them. I asked them what this was about, and they told me they received a complaint I'm carrying drugs on me. I was shocked to hear this. Nothing made sense, and I couldn't figure out who would do something like this. But I went with them peacefully because I knew all too well resisting would only bring more trouble. They didn't let my family come with me, and I was detained at the airport for 5 hours while they went through all of my possessions and literally tore through my bags. My husband and kids had no idea what was going on, and the officers were only telling me to stay quiet and cooperate. They said if I'm not found guilty, they'll let me go, and I don't need to be afraid. I was scared out of my mind, but also had no other choice. So I sat there while they kept doing their work. When they didn't find anything on me and checked the security footage to make sure I didn't drop the drugs off somewhere, they finally had nothing else to keep me there and let me go. Before leaving, I asked them who gave them a false tip, and they didn't answer me. Later, I found out from my mother in law that it was father in law who called in anonymously to make us miss our flights because he didn't want us to leave without them, and that sent me over the edge. I snapped at my father in law, who used his pettiness to literally cost us thousands of dollars and even filed false accusations against me. So I told mother in law about his gambling habits and how I caught him last Christmas gambling with his friends. When I confronted him, he said he's using his own money, so I shouldn't meddle in his affairs. But I bet he was gambling today with his friends, and that's why he was late in the first place. I bet father in law didn't think I'd snitch on him about something I found out months ago, but if he's willing to go to such lengths, then I'm not letting him get off easy. I was so mad that I refused to go with father in law on our trip, and mother in law also walked out of the airport after finding out the truth about all those excuses father in law made for losing money. Eventually, only my kids and my husband and I went on our trip, which was cut short to 6 days. I talked to my husband about filing a report against father in law for wrongfully accusing me and getting me caught, but he has been trying to convince me to let it go and move on. But I'm not sure that I could let father in law get off that easily. Will I be an a hole if I call the cops on him? I found out that over the week when we were out of the country, my mother in law forced my father in law to show her his bank statement, and it turns out he's been losing money for a long time. She didn't notice it until now because their finances are separate and they believed in letting people have their individualistic freedom. But now that she knows how broke father in law is, she is doubling down on him and asking him to hand over his finances to either her or my husband. She told me that by the looks of it, he's addicted to betting large amounts, and the times he asked her for money, saying he doesn't want to go to the bank, he's been using it to gamble. She also told him that if he doesn't quit this habit, she's going to leave him for good. I don't know if threats would work on father in law, but it's clear that mother in law really had no idea about what he did, and she isn't the type to put up with bullshit either. She was mad at me before for not telling her sooner, but now that she is using all her emotional strength on father in law, she could barely manage to be mad at me. Anyway, after hearing the things that were going on, I am again conflicted over whether or not I should press charges against father in law. It's the third week since the incident at the airport, and I told mother in law today that I'm going to call the cops and tell them what father in law did to me. I know it's late, and I should have done this the minute I found out it was him, but my husband really tried to convince me otherwise, and just for the sake of it, I gave his viewpoint a chance. But I'm still just as angry and frustrated as I was that day, and I can't sit tight anymore. That's when my mother in law told me that she doesn't care one way or the other if I do go ahead, as she has decided to leave that man. Apparently, father in law is still gambling and he refuses to listen to mother in law. She said that she wants him to suffer the consequences of his actions, and the few years in prison would be good for his attitude. I can't believe she'd offered to help me literally put father in law behind bars, but here she was offering to be the witness who heard the anonymous call to the cops, and I'm grateful to her for that. So I'll go ahead and fight against father in law whether or not my husband agrees. I know it's been a long time and I should have updated you all about what's happening, but things were so chaotic and messy that I couldn't even bring myself to come online and type out my problems. I fought against father in law with only my mother in law supporting me, and my marriage was suffering all this time as I refused to let my husband's dad go off that easily. Our differences reached a point where he even said he's going to divorce me if I kept at it, and giving me threats was the last thing he could do. I told him to leave the house and never return if he thinks it's okay for me to waste half a day and thousands of dollars just because his dad wanted to travel together. Of course, that was all about the heat of the moment for my husband, and he wasn't going to leave me, but I was very serious. I don't want a guy who can't even stand by me in my decisions. A few weeks later, my husband begged me to not do it and to take him back, and I told him my conditions for giving him another chance. I told him he'd come with me to couples therapy every week and would go no contact with dad. He took his time but agreed on both my conditions, and so we've been trying to make it work. This was the main reason I wanted to not type out what's happening, as it was just too painful. NTA, the OP is definitely not the a hole, and that father in law deserves to suffer the charges. Falsely accusing someone and getting them in trouble with TSA is no joke, and he needs to serve time for what he did. NTA at all, and don't even think anymore. Just press charges and make him pay. TSA is very notorious about how aggressive it can be, and if that was father in law's joke, then it wasn't a funny one. About 2 weeks ago, a former friend who I will call Casey, 24 female, and I, 22 female, ended a friendship. It wasn't over one thing in particular, but we kept having small fights that eventually soured our entire friendship, and we decided that it would be better off if we stopped talking. Even though I cut contact with Casey, a lot of people in my friend group didn't. I was okay with them still being friends with Casey as long as they knew that I was not comfortable being around her for now. A few days ago, my friends and I decided to throw a small party to celebrate one of our friends, Caleb's 22 male, recent promotion at work. I knew that Caleb was still friends with Casey, but I thought that she wouldn't be invited if he knew I was going. When I got to the party, I saw that Casey was already there, talking with a few guests. When she spotted me, she leaned in closer to the people she was speaking with and started whispering about something that I couldn't hear. Everyone then looked at me and started laughing. This happened about 2 or 3 more times over the course of the entire party. I tried to ask a few people what they were laughing at, but I kept getting vague answers or got brushed off. I got fed up, gave Caleb my congratulations, and decided to leave the party early. The next day, I asked everyone in my friend group if they knew that Casey would be invited to the party, and they all replied that they did. I asked why no one warned me that Casey would be there, since they knew that her being there would hurt me. I was then told that it would have been selfish of me to not want Casey to be there since Caleb is still friends with Casey, and it was his celebration. I said that it would have been fine if Casey was there, just that I would have liked to know first so that I could prepare myself or skip the party entirely. They said that it would have been rude of me to skip the party since it was for Caleb's promotion, and that they didn't tell me Casey would be there because they knew that I'd want to skip. I brought up the fact that I thought it was rude that Casey was talking about me throughout the entire party, and no one told her to stop. Someone asked if I actually heard what Casey was saying, and I said no, but I could assume from people's reactions. They said that since I wasn't close enough to hear, I couldn't know for sure if Casey was bad mouthing me or not, and that I probably only thought so because I have bad history with Casey. I was told that I was blowing things out of proportion and that I shouldn't make everything about me. I was kicked out of the friend group after that. AITA? YTA? Your so called friends, including Caleb, are friends with Casey. You should have anticipated that Casey would be at the party. Honestly, the people you are hanging out with don't seem like good friends if they were indeed laughing at remarks made by Casey that were directed at you. Without knowing what these people were saying, I can't give a fair judgment. However, the fact that they readily kicked you out of their group should speak volumes about what they really think of you. It's not easy, but try making new friends. Easily NTA. If someone's presence bothers you, it's okay to expect people to warn you so you can make a decision. Next time, just get out if they pull this on you and if you're uncomfortable. I've been through something similar many years ago, but it was a huge fight since this former friend hooked up with my then girlfriend. And when our common friends told me they might invite him to a party and told me to suck it up, I said that they're free to invite him, but if they invited me also without telling me, a fight would ensue and it'd be ugly. That scared them enough to not pull this on me. Fortunately. However, you should be warned that you'll probably lose or get more distance of friends over time, as they'll continue to invite Casey. In my case, fortunately, they stopped inviting him, mostly because everyone thought he was in the wrong, and their friendship fizzled out. NTA. I was going to say ESH, except that OP mentioned that her friends purposefully did not tell her so that she could not make an informed decision whether or not to attend. The friends knew OP would be uncomfortable, and they took away her autonomy to make the choice about whether to attend. That's not what friends should do. They should have told OP, encouraged her to be there for Caleb, but ultimately respect her decision to protect her own mental health in the way she sees fit. OP never demanded that they not invite Casey, which would be an move. I, 24, female, took a DNA test last month and it came back that I had 96% Chinese in my results. My mom is Chinese and my dad is Korean, but there was no Korean in the test. I know these tests aren't especially accurate, but I thought it was interesting and shared it with my mom, intending to also share with my dad. My mom got really nervous and told me not to share it with him yet. I wasn't sure why, but agreed, and last week she gave me the details of a sperm bank she had used. She told me when she was trying to conceive, but she couldn't, and my dad blamed her. She said he was infertile but refused to get himself checked, but believing it wasn't possible he was sterile. His parents, my grandparents, tried to get him to divorce her, and my mom had very little formal education or way to support herself and got herself pregnant via a sperm donor. I know my dad wouldn't be the type of man who would believe he was at fault for something, and my grandparents don't like my mom anyway, so they probably were happy she can't conceive. I asked her if my sister was also a sperm donor, and she confirmed she was, but not the same one. I was shocked by the news, but not super upset about it. My parents are good to me, and I feel loved. The dates lined up to when I probably was conceived, and the documents look authentic and old, but there's no real way to prove what my mom said is true. Assuming it is WIBTA for not telling my dad, I don't think it's a betrayal of him, seeing as my mom used a sperm donor and she is still a great wife to him. But in our culture, if the children isn't the father's, even if it's via sperm donor, knowingly or not, it's a big deal. Passing on your line to your generic children is always preferred to even adoption. I'm less sure about my sister. She's 4 years younger than me, 20, female, how she would take the news. I want to tell her, but I don't know how she will respond. NTA. Actually, why WBTA for telling him, and this could even place your mother in danger. What she just disclosed to you is a history of abuse, her husband blaming her for infertility, refusing to get checked out, though as it turns out the problem probably was his, and leveraging his family against her and threatening divorce because she couldn't magically impregnate herself. NTA, not everything needs to be told. You know why your mom did it. I personally think your dad and his family are complete AHs for their reaction to her not getting pregnant, but I understand the cultural pressures. It would hurt everyone to tell, and it doesn't seem it would hurt anyone not to. Despite the cultural ideas about who is or isn't your child, it doesn't matter. Trust. There will have been many, many, many such cases throughout history, and those who never knew never cared. What does it really matter if you're not genetically his? Your parents love you, you love them. Unless you want to throw it in his face, why tell?